Hey guys, are you considering starting a consultancy business focused on nonprofits? Is that something that you've always wanted to do? Well, you're in luck today because on the Action Chat, we are with a very special guest. She's a content creator and consultant exclusively with nonprofits. Please help me welcome Marlene Oliveira. Marlene, so glad that you're here with us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I want to dive in. That was a really brief introduction, and I just want to get your take on, how did you get started focusing on nonprofits, and give us some background. What do you do? Where do you come from?
Absolutely. So I focus on nonprofits because it's who I've always worked with. So straight out of university, my first job was at a nonprofit organization, and I spent a number of years in-house. So starting with that sort of job, many in nonprofit would be familiar with the everything job, fundraising, communications, marketing, programs, volunteer development, signing the next lease. And then a couple of years into that, I moved into a full-time communications role at the same national health charity. So then there was a lot of on-the-job learning in communications. And when I was kind of done with being an employee and wanted to run my own business, I had invested time in the sector. The sector is sort of who I know. The people are my friends and my work contacts. And I knew I wasn't going to leave. I knew I just wanted to stay with the nonprofit sector and focus my consulting work on that group, on that audience of nonprofit communicators. So I've really, I started there right out of school because it was directly connected to what I studied. And then it has evolved since then. But what hasn't changed is that they're my favorite people to work with.
Very cool. So what exactly are you doing with nonprofits? Like, what is your area of expertise with your clients?
So my focus is on copywriting and content planning. My background is on communications management in general. But something I found as a consultant is it's much easier to get work when it's obvious what you can do, very specifically what you can do for your clients. And copywriting is easy to understand. It's something not every communicator is good at. It might be surprising to some folks, but some people are more strategy and marketing oriented. So it's something that a lot of people don't want to do or don't have the peace and quiet to do. I knew that from my in-house days. So it made sense for me to focus in on copywriting. And that's what I have done. I've been consulting for 10 years. That's what I've done all of that time. But I do have the communications management background. So I do some content strategy, things like branding, a little bit of branding work, and a lot of website content planning, along with actually just writing the content.
Awesome. I love how, right out the gate, I even wrote it down because, the whole point of us talking today is talking about how do you get clients and how do you get clients, particularly in the nonprofit industry. And you already, right out the gate, coming out swinging. The quote you said was, it's a lot easier to get clients when it's obvious what you do. And I think that that's just really important to point out. I think that's true for all entrepreneurs, but nonprofits in particular. My background is also, I worked for a nonprofit for several years as a communications director. So I did their PR, their marketing, their fundraising. So I get it. And I actually started my business first trying to work with nonprofits, and I couldn't hack it because I couldn't get I couldn't get the nonprofit clients. So I think that's a good transition to asking you, like, what are some of the trials or what are the challenges in getting nonprofit clients?
Well, I don't know if you found this. I suspect this isn't a problem that you had given what you do now, but I find a lot of other consultants are hoping they can bypass that idea of new business development or sales and going out and telling people what you do and that you'd like to do it for them. Cold calls, cold emails, warm emails, asking for referrals, somehow having that sales mentality of asking for work. And of course, you don't ask for work. You're offering something people need and you position it that way and you just let them know that you're available if they need that help. But I think that's the number one, it's mindset, but it's also a tactic that has helped me from the very beginning. So when I first started, referrals came my way very nicely. People were very excited that I was running my own business now. I had a lot of contacts in the nonprofit space, and I had quite a few referrals right out of the gate, and then they dried up. The excitement was over, and I think I actually sent, to be honest, a few hundred letters in my first year. And I'm not saying that was the most effective thing, but it gave me that warm up and knowledge that got me clients. That letter writing campaign landed me some of the best clients I've ever had, either right away or 2 years later. I was planting those seeds. So you have to go and get clients. You really do. And maybe maybe it's harder in the nonprofit space. I have only worked in the sector. So I've always kind of approached it that way, and I can't compare it to somewhere else. But that idea of if you build it, they will come has certainly not applied for me. You build it, they kind of find out about it, and then you go and tell them you can help them. That's what I find is pivotal, is key.
Very cool. And I'm just gonna, you have so many nuggets in there. I'm just gonna break out some of the things I heard again. So first of all, having a sales mentality, I think that's really important, because even, and I'll make the comparison, having been in both industries, I'll make the comparison for us, right? So I think having a sales mentality is something that most entrepreneurs struggle with, period. I think there's a disconnect in our head between, and I think it's corporate culture. Like the big businesses out there, they box everything into categories, right? Into silos. You got a sales team, you've got a marketing team, you've got your service people. And as an entrepreneur, you don't have those silos. It's just you. And so sometimes we don't connect in our heads, hey, my marketing needs to lead into sales. I need to land a sale, and then I need to service the client. Like there's those three parts that the client has to move through all of them. So I think that's good advice. I think that's good advice for everybody, not just in that industry. Then you mentioned you need to lead with value. Like you need to be really clear about what is it that you're offering and the value that they offer. And my experience between the nonprofit and the, I said I couldn't hack it. And the truth was, at the time, I couldn't hack it as an entrepreneur. I just didn't know how to do it. But having now the experience of both sides, with the nonprofit, what I see is their budgets are just a lot smaller. So with business, you need to be really clear the value that you lead with. But a nonprofit, you've got to really tune into what it is that they need, because they just don't have the budget to risk with people. So if you aren't leading with that value, it's really hard to get that client. So you just have to really zero in on it.
Interesting. I mean, you're so right about the reality of what I do. So it's interesting to hear that it is that little bit harder.
Yeah, I mean, it would be the same if you're working so my ideal audience are solo PR pros and solo marketing pros, and lots of times they're struggling. So I have the same issue, because their budgets are short. But the difference is, if I were to work with a large PR or marketing firm, their budget's got a lot more leeway, and they could take a risk on a month of something and say, hey, if this worked, let's do more. It didn't work. Hey, let's do something else. The last thing you said that I thought was really interesting was I call it the rising tide. And that's when you're really connected in the industry like you were. And I'm just kind of decoding some of the stuff you said, and so that we can kind of talk about it. But when you're really connected in the industry and you decide to hang your shingle out, lots of times you get a lot of referrals right away. And one of the issues lots of entrepreneurs face that you kind of overcame is the tide rises with this initial push of referrals and clients, but you're not really intentional about what your service is, or you're not really intentional about who you want to work with. So that tide rises, but then clients leave. Like that's just the nature of business. Clients come and go. And so the tide goes out, and suddenly you're left somewhere and you're like, I don't even know what I offer. I don't even know who I work with. I don't even know, like, how do I get clients? And sometimes it's really funny, because that tide can last for like 5 years. And you're like, I've been running a successful business for 5 years, and suddenly I have no idea what to do. So I love hearing you say that. But then on the other hand there, the solution to that problem is knowing who you serve and what you serve, or what you do. And you've obviously got both those dialed in. So you're a great example to people aspiring to want to start a business.
Oh, thank you. I mean, to be honest with you, when that valley happened, I don't think anyone watched any more of the 2008 Olympics than I did, because the work dried up. I spent too much time watching the Olympics, and then I thought I need to be more intentional about this business that I'm running. And prior to that sort of the referrals losing momentum, I was sort of taking whatever came in. So I said I've been doing copywriting since the beginning, and I was, but I was doing some other things. And when I tightened everything up, and when I realized I needed to invest, that's when I really was strategic, did some research, did some learning, brushed up on my skills around copywriting. Because when I was in-house, I hired people to do the copywriting. I didn't do it myself in the last few years anyway. So it took the valley for me to do the real thinking and planning and the intentional marketing and sales. It took a little bit of a motivation that, all right, the work dried up and the Olympics are over. You got to find something to do.
So did you watch the Olympics just right now? Or were
you know busy? What? No, I don't have quite the same amount of time as then, but I don't think we had the same, I don't remember 2008 where it was, but I don't think we had the same time lag where now nothing's on when I go to watch TV over my lunch.
I'm not sure. Don't quote me. I think it was Canada, though. I think it was Vancouver was the time.
Oh, no, 2008, it was Summer Olympics, because the thing I do remember is your Michael Phelps breaking all those records.
Okay. Something else that you're just saying really struck me was taking control. Like you said, you send out a bunch of like emails or direct messages, and more than you ever sent out before. And I think one of the things there's two principles I think hidden in there that we can kind of pull out. One is that you're 100% in control, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you need more clients, you can do more stuff to get it. Yes. And I think lots of times we play the victim where it's like the Olympics are on, let's watch the Olympics, right? Like, I don't really know what to do, so I'm not going to do anything. Or I'm going to I know this. I always think of this example because I know a guy who seriously spent a year writing blog posts and didn't publish a single one. That's not marketing, right? That's like just writing blog posts. Yes. But the other thing was I forgot what the other thing was because I went on that tangent, but it was you take control and you reach out and you go for your clients. And I think that that's a really good mindset to have for everyone. And it's something that doesn't stop when you have clients. You have to keep pushing that.
Absolutely. Once you have clients, you can start to be more intentional about even more specifically what projects you want or what type of clients even within a sector or a subsector, which I've done, which I do every year. It changes a little bit and I go after what I feel like doing the next year.
Very cool. So tell me, what are some of the frustrations? You're in the nonprofit industry. Is there anything about it? And I know, we're talking about your industry, right? But is there anything that frustrates you about it? Like if I was thinking about getting into nonprofits, what would you tell me are the most frustrating things?
Well, it is a tough one because in terms of comparing it to the for-profit sector, I don't have a good comparison. I think, clients in any sector will carry the same types of frustrations, whether it's someone who's not great at paying on time or someone who disappears in the middle of a project. It could be anything, and it probably applies to both. But one thing that I'm used to that I think can push some consultants the wrong way is the approval by committee or the really long processes that can be involved in moving projects to the next stage or to completion. I think that can be an adjustment for some people, and you need to go in with eyes wide open, or you need to, if you don't like that, you need to find those more nimble nonprofits that don't make marketing communications decisions by committee.
Yeah, and that's probably the majority. Like those nimble ones are probably hard to find, right? Because I'm imagining the majority of nonprofits have some sort of committee process.
Definitely. I mean, some will have the board is so far removed from operations, you don't have to worry about it. And then others, there's a marketing expert on the board who has a hand in everything. So there is a range, but, in some nonprofits, there are staff committees for things like branding or website development. So you can have some control over it, whether you want to work in that way or not.
So is that, I get the sense that we're talking about in terms of service delivery, it can be kind of frustrating because you've got to jump through hoops constantly and kind of get people on board with your vision or with your plan. But is this also applicable to like getting clients? Is there a long turnaround time in terms of I got a lead and it's got to be approved and it takes time to land the client? Is that also what you're saying?
I think that can happen. I think because I focus on copywriting and content, I don't come up against that as often. It's pretty straightforward and there's either a budget for it or there isn't. But for people who are maybe more, developing PR plans for organizations or doing more communications strategy, top level strategy, I think that is something you would have to consider and factor in. You might put in a proposal and you should follow up, but it might take a couple months depending on their processes.
So what would you say is the opposite of that? So we talk about frustrations, like what's the best thing of working in nonprofits?
Oh, well, for me, I'm getting exactly what I hoped out of it, which is it's always a learning opportunity about really amazing causes, solutions, information. I worked at a diabetes organization, so 6 years in communications plus 2 years before that, I was ready to write or learn about something other than this one disease. And with each client I pick up, I'm learning about poverty reduction or the environment or animal causes. So that's the number one benefit for me is I feel like I'm learning all the time and maybe, even becoming a better person because I'm more aware of the issues around all of us that people are working to solve. But it's also community. My clients are a community of like-minded people. So they're very much related, those two things, but one is the learning and one is just knowing I'm working with my people. We have things in common. We have values in common. It's a very comfortable place.
Very cool. It sounds like, I hear that when people have really found their tribe or their niche. So that sounds really exciting that you've kind of found that. So the, well, what I was going to say kind of left me because I inserted that other comment in between. So let me just go to my list here to save me while I fumble over with my foot in my mouth. So landing clients. What about retaining clients? What are some keys to, like, are there any tricks or are there anything, and again, you don't have to compare to the for-profit industry, but like what are your tips or keys for keeping clients once you've got them?
Well, I will say, I mean, maybe that does raise a little bit of a frustration. It's minor, but because of the comment you made about budgets can be so precious and scarce in some cases, that is an ongoing challenge for me. And maybe that's why I'm good at always getting new clients. A lot of the time, there is only approval for one thing or a certain thing once a year. And I have found it is a little bit hard to get a few clients who I'm always working on a project for them. I do get obviously clients that come back repeatedly. And I think to do that, it's about staying in touch. It's about showing that I care about the community. And I know you and I connected through a LinkedIn group. There's a lot that I do to stay connected and show that I'm invested in this community and in working with this group of people. I think that goes a long way. And then along with that is sort of some of the content marketing I do. And that helps my past, current, and future clients to all understand that I do have that expertise, that I'm not coming in and bestowing my for-profit expertise on nonprofits and thinking that it's immediately transferable. I understand the realities of a nonprofit communicator's day-to-day, their expectations, and their work.
Yeah, I love that. So there's a couple things, again, that I love what you said. So the last thing, just so that I don't forget it, is having that mastery over that industry and really owning your niche, owning your tribe, and saying, hey, this is the people I work with. And that gives a level of expertise for sure, but also like just connection with you. And, before we move on, do you want to plug? I was going to give you some time at the end too, and I'll still do it. But do you want to plug that LinkedIn group? Do you want to tell us the name of it?
You know what? The LinkedIn group, I believe, and I'm going to reveal too much here, I believe it's called Marketing and PR Professionals and Non-for-Profit. The reason I'm not even sure what it's called is I don't know about you, but I'm finding LinkedIn less and less of a connection place. And I know they've been playing around with their groups, but in the last couple of years, they've switched my, what I can do as a group manager. And I feel it's affected the interactions in the group. But what I will plug is something that was inspired by that LinkedIn group when I thought it was working more effectively. And that's a blog that I created called the Nonprofit Mark Community Blog. And I created that blog because I was running that LinkedIn group. I was running local meetups for nonprofit communicators. And there was this real appetite for translating some of that online. I know the LinkedIn group was in social media, but this learning and sharing from each other that I was doing in the live events to make it available to people who weren't just in Toronto. So I launched that Nonprofit Mark Community blog a couple of years later, where almost all of the content is written by other people, not me. It's written by nonprofit marketing communications managers, directors, coordinators who are sharing the how-to of their day-to-day. And it's a really valuable resource. I'm really excited about actually the next post that's going up because it's very tactical and practical information to help communicators do their job. So I am still thinking about that LinkedIn group and what I want to do with it and how I can serve communicators better through it. But it definitely took a backseat to the Nonprofit Mark Community blog.
Gotcha. And I do a lot on LinkedIn, so I've got a lot to say about that. But we'll pause that because there's another thing that you said a second ago. In terms of retaining clients, and that was one of the frustrations was kind of keeping them on board. And I think this is true of all. Again, it's in the nonprofit industry. I feel like it's amplified because their budgets are so razor thin, and because they're so like. Another thing that I think that happens in the nonprofit community is that it attracts a lot of people who are very concerned with helping a certain cause or helping people, which is really good. But it also means that they're not always the most business savvy people. So you've got this combination of, and that's not true of everybody. Like, I'm being very generalist, but the combination of a razor thin budget and not really knowing exactly what's needed to make the nonprofit be profitable, but be
Successful.
on good, yeah, to thrive, results in, like, it's very hard to retain clients. And so I think but this is true of every industry, right? Because you have the same, it's amplified in the nonprofit, but it's the same in every industry. And what I have found that really helps you retain your clients is from that very beginning, that same thing you said about leading, you talk about leading with value in your marketing and in your sales. You keep that as the through line into your services. So every time you have like a checkup with them, it's almost like a re-enrollment conversation where it's like, hey, we talked about this result. Like, this is why you hired me, was to get this result. So this is what we did, and these are the results we got.
Yes.
And here's the plan moving forward to take you further into this.
Smart. Yes, very smart.
And doing that, once a month, once every quarter, once every 6 months, whenever it is your check, depending on your service, yours as a content manager, it might be, depending on your contract with them, it might be like once a month or once a year, but whatever it is, but you get in there and you have that conversation. It's constant re-enrollment so that they keep connecting that value to what you're providing. And that's how you really retain them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's smart. I definitely, I'm good at the certain part of the sales process, and what you're describing is something I mean, you're just reminding me that I do stay in touch, but it's not always about taking things to the next level. It's just about, remember, I'm over here. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and we all, I mean, I've got my spots too, right? We all have those things we can improve on. So very cool. Okay, so I just wanted to comment real quick, and it's kind of outside of, we talked about a little bit LinkedIn, right? That's interesting that you say that about the groups, because LinkedIn has gone through a lot of changes, but I think that LinkedIn is still a really powerful place to get clients. And I think that the secret is less in the groups now, because I think groups were really powerful, right? Do they still let you send emails out on their behalf?
You know what? I used to do that. I haven't even tried to do that, just because what how I've tightened up my marketing and sales and what I'm trying to sell has changed a little bit, but I did used to do that, and I haven't tried to in at least a year.
So I think that's a better pathway to go than talk about LinkedIn, because I talk about LinkedIn a lot. So let's travel down that rabbit hole. Talk to me about, because I noticed there was a post on LinkedIn about you tightening up your services. And so I'm assuming that that's in the same vein, right? So what caused you to start kind of focusing in on your marketing and focusing on your services? Like, what is that like, or describe to us what's going on there?
Well, in the last few years, I played around just experimenting with changing up my business, and yeah, really just experimenting with new things. So I have had a couple of online courses that I offered. When I launched the blog, I also launched a Twitter chat, and it has been a successful chat. But despite the fact that it was successful, I stopped running it last November as well. So what happened was, over the period of trial and error, or experimentation and learning, courses were awesome. It's a great way for me to help nonprofits with smaller budgets who are looking for capacity building instead of outsourcing. But for me as a consultant, the effort that went into launching or promoting or just always keeping these things top of mind did not pay off as much as a simple outreach to clients to pick up consulting work. The Twitter chat was something, it was a completely me giving. It was not really tied into the streams of my business, the revenue streams of my business. It was part of the way that I give back to the community and connect with the community. But as every consultant, I believe, should do, I do business planning every year, at least once a year. And I set aside a couple days to look at what brought in the revenue, to look at what I enjoy doing, to kind of look at what makes the most sense in terms of where I spend my time. And last fall, I sort of decided I want 2018 to be easier. And it's easier if I do fewer things, work just as hard, but on fewer things. So I decided to just make a cold break, step back from a couple of the things that I was doing, and leaving the door open to come back to them if I felt like I wanted to, and if the community really missed them. And those two things were that Twitter chat and the courses. So, to take it back to the LinkedIn groups, when I had courses, I found the LinkedIn groups very useful to let people know about them. Sometimes I would do an email to the group as part of the launch, not directly selling, but to get people into sort of an email promotion of some of those online trainings. But when I streamlined, then I switched gears with how I use LinkedIn. And I do agree with you that it's great. And I use LinkedIn. I like to download my contacts every once in a while, review them, get a sense of who's moved on, who's moved into an organization I might like to work with. And I use it for prospecting. So I use it to kind of remind myself of who I should reach out to for business, who I should reach out to for referrals, all of that. So I really, as I think you're probably alluding to, I really use it more for my one-on-one lead generation or prospecting, not really promotion to a broader group.
Awesome. So cool. Because again, so much gold in what you're saying.
Thank you.
I think the first thing is that I want to just call out what you said there was, I think so many times as entrepreneurs, we feel like we have to be everything to everybody. And what you're really saying, and what I found to be true, is that when you actually focus your services, your niche, your marketing, when you focus in and do less, not only is it easier, like what you said, but it's more profitable, right? Like that mastery, even like the mastery of like choosing your niche and being that person, you can actually command higher fees because of that expertise. Like you can make more money through that focusing. So, and it's counterintuitive, I think, to what we think when we first start our businesses. We think, hey, I want to be a full service organization and I want to provide everything to everybody. So, what ends up happening is you show up to these sales conversations and you have a staring contest, right? Because you're like, I want you to tell me what you want, and you're waiting for me as the expert to tell you what you need, and we're just staring at each other.
Yeah, that's funny. That's true. Because it's very easy for me, and I don't know what your position is on the elevator pitch, but I basically don't have one, because once you have a conversation with me, it's very clear and it's very easy for me to articulate because of an intentional focus in my business.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan. I think I like to think of your marketing as sections of a conversation rather than like an elevator pitch is only good if you're like looking for venture capital and you've got to go and like sit in front of a committee and pitch them, right? Like that to me is the only reason why you would need an elevator pitch.
That makes sense.
Instead, I focus on what I call your results-oriented marketing message, where it's like a short message that outlines who you work with. So like nonprofits, or in my case, solo PR and marketing pros, what problem they face and what result you help them get. And that's not really an elevator pitch. It's more of like the theme for your business. Like it's your branding, right? It kind of sets the pace for everything you do. And you just kind of look at your business in terms of, or your marketing in terms of, what level of the conversation are we in? Like it's one big conversation, but I'm giving it in chunks as I go.
Yeah, exactly. That makes perfect sense. And it feels natural. And, everyone isn't a potential client. They shouldn't be if you're a specialist. So let it flow, let it come out in conversation. And if you're a fit, you're a fit.
I love what you said, because one of the things I say all the time is clients are everywhere. So the question is not where are my clients? The question is which clients are you looking for?
Yes, that's right.
Everyone everywhere is a client for somebody. It's just you need to know who your client is.
Absolutely.
One of the other things you said was that you wanted 2018 to be easier, and awesome, because that, one of the mistakes we make as entrepreneurs as well is we're not intentional about our business. So we end up working like 60-hour weeks and wondering where our family went, right?
Yeah.
So intentional business building is so important. I'm glad that that's working for you. I'm glad that you're doing it. And then you're also modeling another key for getting clients, and that's testing. Like you've got to be constantly trying new things and evaluating how are things going. And I'm just very impressed also by you're basically your prospecting, right, on LinkedIn. Like that's you keep demonstrating over and over again a principle everyone should model, and that is take control of your marketing, right? Like if you want clients, master something and use it and work it and become a master in it and engage people. So
I love that you said that. I just had a debate with a friend who's also a consultant and is struggling. And the debate was regarding cold calling or warm calling, prospecting, because it doesn't feel good. They were hoping to say like, no, that doesn't work. And in his case, it was, I don't think it's working the way you're doing it, but you don't know until you try and refine and improve it. And you made me think of the person who blogged but didn't publish it anywhere.
Yeah.
So investing all of this time and not getting to see when they hit publish, did anyone care about that first post, and how could I improve it and tailor it and get traction? Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the things I think that we're talking about here is I think marketing is only marketing when it gets you in front of your client, right? It's got to be actual. Otherwise, it's not marketing. It's something else. It's long-term value. And so we'll go with the blogging example just because that's what we're talking about, right? But like, if you create all these blogs, it's not really marketing. But in our heads, we count that as marketing. And if you never ever push publish, you're never ever going to get clients. So in your head, you've got to separate. Creating the blog is like a long-term value. Like there's value there, but it's not marketing. Pushing that publish button is the marketing. And if you can increase the number of times you push that publish button, then you can start to do things like you're talking about, where you're measuring and you're changing and you're tweaking and you're finding what's working. And you could apply that principle to whatever it is: cold callings, LinkedIn, networking, webinars, whatever the method of your marketing is, you take that same principle and you just apply it. What is the piece that is marketing? Or another way of saying it is, what's the client generating activity portion?
Yes.
And what portion of this is long-term value?
Absolutely. I agree. Yeah.
And I'm gonna model some of this and say, hey, your friend's struggling. Sounds like you could introduce them to somebody that you know.
Absolutely.
See me asking for referrals, guys. This is what it's all about. Okay, very cool. I want to talk a little bit about your expertise, content, right? And in particular, we're kind of. I saw that post about you changing your services on LinkedIn, and when I read that post, a couple things jumped at me. Two thoughts immediately hit me. One is that it was very engaging. And so I was like, oh man, she's really good. Like, no wonder she's a content marketer. Like she's really good at this. And the other one was, I wonder why she chose LinkedIn. So was it just a place for you to announce, or was it part of a bigger strategy?
To be honest, more than anything, it was because it was an announcement, and it was an announcement affecting a lot of members of my network that I really wanted them to know. So the chat, as an example, it was a very successful chat. I didn't shut it down because people didn't want it or weren't attending. So I really wanted to make sure people weren't sitting at their computers on the regular chat day and time when it was no longer operating. Same thing with the course. I was letting people know I would not be running courses in 2018, but that they could still get in and have access to it in 2018 by buying before I closed the cart. So I had a very real desire and need for people to get that information without having to leave LinkedIn, people who check LinkedIn. I don't really do the whole content syndication, publish on my blog and then publish the same content elsewhere on a regular basis. I did it in that case. But normally I do use LinkedIn to share content that I publish on my blog or on the nonprofit Mark community blogs. I have two blogs. So I do normally put it out there knowing that a good percentage of my network is nonprofit communicators. And if they're interested, I want them to come over to my website and sign up for my email updates. But I don't publish everything in both places because I publish a lot. I also don't want to clutter LinkedIn with authored posts on that site all of the time. It doesn't fit with what I'm trying to do.
Very cool. And I'm gonna decode a little bit what you just said. So I saw a funnel. My head goes to, what's the funnel? What's the marketing? How does this work? And I kind of saw it come to light here. You've got a base connections where most of them are in the nonprofit sector. You're posting on your blog and then re-putting or linking to that on your feed. So it goes. You've got these targeted connections. They see content that's valuable. They go to your website. Then they sign up for your email list. And that process results in you being able to do email marketing to get clients and engage them.
That's right.
Really cool. And you don't have to get into specifics because I'm sure, this is what you do, but like what sort of, in your area of expertise, content marketing, what sort of things are working right now? What's getting clients? Where are your eyes at right now?
You know what? I'm finding a very reassuring return to the basics, returning to what works to help nonprofits deliver on their strategies. And specifically, it seems to me, or maybe this is my client group and my connections, people are chasing the shiny objects less and remembering that their websites are really important, that the website needs to be their digital home base. And that means when they are refreshing or designing a new site, they are paying more attention to content. It seems that way to me. And I mean, that's what I'm putting out into the universe. That's one of the main categories of work that I enjoy most. So I help nonprofits to plan the content for a new site, or I write the content for them, but one has to come before the other. And that's reassuring, because I spend a lot of years hearing from people after the site was built that they need content to go in it. And that doesn't always allow for content that helps them to meet their communications goals. Again, this might be my biased group that I am connecting with, but it does seem that communicators are more and more tying plans like their websites directly to their strategic plans, and the communications objectives are meeting those helping to meet those goals and targets more than ever. So I'm seeing more of that. I'm getting more clients who are asking for the strategy first and then the content, which is nice. And then of course, storytelling is a huge trend and has been for a while. And that is something I love doing for clients. When I mentioned to you that it's working in the sector is always a learning opportunity. If I help a client with their website content strategy, of course, I'm deeply immersed in the work of one organization. But when I help clients with stories, I can drop in on little projects and continue to learn so much about this huge sector full of amazing people and amazing work. So I am seeing those two things, strategy and storytelling, as coming up more and more in my work.
Very cool. And I you said storytelling is a trend. Yeah, I would agree. It's been a trend since like the cavemen. Like,
but marketers and communicators are talking about it again as being important.
We're finally catching up to what we knew when we were prehistoric people.
That's right. That's true.
You know, one of the things, and I think honestly, I don't sell yourself short here, because I think that you're ahead of the curve here in that strategy, right? Because one of the mistakes I'm thinking companies are still making, like I'm still seeing this, and not many marketers are catching up, and that is knowing your call to action, or knowing the end from the beginning. Yes. Like that strategy portion of it, right? We're still doing, as an industry of communicators, we are still going out there and creating marketing for marketing's sake, where it's like each piece of marketing has its own call to action. Each piece of marketing kind of talks about the theme, but there's no cohesive connection to the business. And I think that this goes back to our mentality where we talked about at the very beginning of this conversation of everybody's in silos, right? The sales team doesn't talk to the marketing team. The marketing team doesn't talk to the services team. So there's this incongruency between all those different principles. And marketing works at its peak. I mean, you can get some results that way, but marketing and sales work at their peak when it's all tied in together. You don't create your marketing, like you don't create your website until you know exactly who you're talking to and what it is you want them to do.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Well, really cool. Thank you so much. You know, we're coming up on 45 minutes, so I don't want to take up too much of your time here. Where can we find more about you? Like if we want advice on nonprofits, I think you've got a blog for that. Or if we are a nonprofit and we want to work with you, where do we find you?
Yes, so moflow.ca, that's my company name, MO, my initials, and then flow, because I help the communications flow, .ca. I'm in Canada. And from there, you can connect over to the Nonprofit Mark Community blog that I mentioned, to my social media, and to sign up for my email updates for people who want to get tips on writing nonprofit content.
Very cool. And those links are in the description of the YouTube video to both Marlene's LinkedIn website or LinkedIn page and her website, as well as, of course, the links we have to BriartWorks PR and my LinkedIn page. Very cool. Any social media handles you wanna throw out there so we can find you there too? Sure.
I'm active on LinkedIn, so you're linking to that already. And then I'm most active on Twitter. My handle is mo_flow on Twitter. Probably the chat that I ran for a few years made it a really vibrant and interesting place for me. So I hang out there more than any other social network.
mo_flow, right?
That's it. Yes.
And I'll add that into the comments at the end. Hey guys, that's gonna wrap us up here. So thanks for joining us for this conversation on getting clients in the nonprofit space. So we'd love to hear your comments and see if this was useful for you. Stick them below and let us know. You know, if you have any further questions, happy to follow up with you. Until next time, take some fast focus, imperfect action. I believe in you. You can do this. This was the Action Chat.